Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the incredible life story of a true legend, Bruce Lee. From his groundbreaking martial arts skills to his legacy as a cultural icon, Bruce Lee's journey continues to inspire millions worldwide. Join us as we explore the man, the myth, and the martial arts pioneer who changed cinema and the world forever. Let's get started. Bruce Lee, November 27th, 1940, July 20th, 1973, was a Hong Kong American martial artist, actor, filmmaker, and philosopher. He was the founder of Jeet Kune Do, a hybrid martial arts philosophy which was formed from Lee's experiences in unarmed fighting and self-defense, as well as eclectic Zen, Buddhist, and Taoist philosophies as a new school of martial arts thought. With a film career spanning Hong Kong and the United States, Lee is regarded as the first global Chinese film star and one of the most influential martial artists in the history of cinema. Known for his roles in 5 feature-length martial arts films, Lee is credited with helping popularize martial arts films in the 1970s and promoting Hong Kong action cinema. Born in San Francisco and raised in British Hong Kong, Lee was introduced to the Hong Kong film industry as a child actor by his father. His early martial arts experience included Wing Chun, trained under Ip Man, Tai Chi, boxing, winning a Hong Kong boxing tournament, and frequent street fighting, neighborhood and rooftop fights. In 1959, Lee moved to Seattle, where he enrolled at the University of Washington in 1961. It was during this time in the United States that he began considering making money by teaching martial arts, even though he aspired to have a career in acting. He opened his first martial arts school, operated out of his home in Seattle. After later adding a second school in Oakland, California, he once drew significant attention at the 1964 Long Beach International Karate Championships of California by making demonstrations and speaking. He subsequently moved to Los Angeles to teach, where his students included Chuck Norris, Sharon Tate, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His roles in America, including playing Kato in The Green Hornet, introduced him to American audiences, but the cultural frictions that existed did not allow Lee to fully express himself. After returning to Hong Kong in 1971, Lee landed his first leading role in The Big Boss, directed by Lo Wei. A year later, he starred in Fist of Fury, in which he portrayed Shen Zhen, and The Way of the Dragon, directed and written by Lee. He went on to star in the US Hong Kong co-production Enter the Dragon, 1973, and The Game of Death, 1978. His Hong Kong and Hollywood-produced films, all of which were commercially successful, elevated Hong Kong martial arts films to a new level of popularity and acclaim, sparking a surge of Western interest in Chinese martial arts. The direction and tone of his films, including their fight choreography and diversification, dramatically influenced and changed martial arts and martial arts films worldwide. With his influence, kung fu films began to displace the wuxia film genre. Fights were choreographed more realistically. Fantasy elements were discarded for real-world conflicts, and the characterization of the male lead went from simply being a chivalrous hero to one that embodied the notion of masculinity. Lee's career was cut short by his sudden death at age 33 from a brain edema. Nevertheless, his films remained popular, gained a large cult following, and became widely imitated and exploited. He became an iconic figure known throughout the world, particularly among the Chinese, based upon his portrayal of Cantonese culture in his films, and among Asian Americans for defying Asian stereotypes in the United States. 19. Since his death, Lee has continued to be a prominent influence on modern combat sports, including judo, karate, mixed martial arts, and boxing, as well as modern popular culture, including film, television, comics, animation, and video games. Time named Lee one of the 100 most important people of the 20th century. Early life. Bruce Lee's birth name was Lee Jun Fan. His father, Lee Hoi Chuen, was a Cantonese opera singer based in Hong Kong. His mother, Grace Ho, was born in Shanghai, and she was of Eurasian ancestry. In December 1939, his parents traveled to California for an international opera tour in Chinatown, San Francisco. He was born there on November 27, 1940, allowing him to claim U.S. citizenship due to the United States' just solely citizenship laws. When he was 4 months old, April 1941, the Lee family returned to Hong Kong. Soon after, the Lee family experienced unexpected hardships over the next 4 years as Japan, amid World War II, launched a surprise attack on Hong Kong in December 1941 and ruled the city for the next 4 years. Lee's maternal grandfather was Cantonese, his maternal grandmother was English, and his maternal great-uncle, Robert Houghton, was a Hong Kong businessman of Dutch, Jewish, and Cantonese descent. Career and education, 1940 to 1958. Early roles, schooling and martial arts initiation. Lee's father, Lee Hoi Chuan, was a Cantonese opera star. As a result, Junior Lee was introduced to the world of cinema at a very young age and appeared in several films as a child. Lee had his first role as a baby who was carried onto the stage in the film Golden Gate Girl. He took his Chinese stage name as Lee the Little Dragon, for the fact that he was born in both the hour and the year of the dragon by the Chinese zodiac. As a 9-year-old, he co-starred with his father in The Kid in 1950, which was based on a comic book character, Kid Xiang, and was his first leading role. By the time he was 18, he had appeared in 20 films. After attending Tak Sun School, several blocks from his home at 218 Nathan Road, Kowloon, Lee entered the primary school division of the Catholic La Salle College at age 12. In 1956, due to poor academic performance and possibly poor conduct, he was transferred to St. Francis Xavier's College, where he was mentored by brother Edward Muss, FMS, a Bavarian-born teacher and coach of the school boxing team. After Lee was involved in several street fights, his parents decided that he needed to be trained in martial arts. In 1953, Lee's friend William Chung introduced him to Ip Man, but his European background on his mother's side meant he was initially rejected from learning Wing Chun Kung Fu under him because of the long-standing rule in the Chinese martial arts world not to teach foreigners. Chung spoke on his behalf and Lee was accepted into the school and began training in Wing Chun with Ip Man. Ip tried to keep his students from fighting in the street gangs of Hong Kong by encouraging them to fight in organized competitions. After a year of his training with Ip Man, most of the other students refused to train with Lee. They had learned of his mixed ancestry, and the Chinese were generally against teaching their martial arts techniques to non-Asians. Lee's sparring partner, Hawkins Chung, states, "Probably fewer than 6 people in the whole Wing Chun clan were personally taught, or even partly taught, by Ip Man." However, Lee showed a keen interest in Wing Chun and continued to train privately with Ip Man, William Chung, and Wong Shun Lung. In 1958, Lee won the Hong Kong School's boxing tournament, knocking out the previous champion, Gary Elms, in the final. That year, Lee was also a cha-cha dancer, winning Hong Kong's Crown Colony Cha-Cha Championship. 1959 to 1964, continuous studies and martial arts breakthrough. In his late teens, Lee's street fights became more frequent and included beating the son of a feared triad family. In 1958, after students from a rival Choi Lai Fut martial arts school challenged Lee's Wing Chun school, he engaged in a fight on a rooftop. In response to an unfair punch by another boy, he beat him so badly that he knocked out one of his teeth, leading to the boy's parents making a complaint to the police. Lee's mother had to go to a police station and sign a document saying that she would take full responsibility for his actions if they released him into her custody. Though she did not mention the incident to her husband, she suggested that her son return to the United States to claim his U.S. citizenship at the age of 18, 46. Lee's father agreed as Lee's college prospects were not very promising if he remained in Hong Kong. The police detective came and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Lee, your son is really fighting bad in school. If he gets into just one more fight, I might have to put him in jail." In April 1959, Lee's parents decided to send him to the United States to stay with his older sister, Agnes Lee, who was already living with family friends in San Francisco. After several months, he moved to Seattle in 1959 to continue his high school education, where he also worked for Ruby Chow as a live-in waiter at her restaurant. Chow's husband was a co-worker and friend of Lee's father. Lee's elder brother Peter Lee joined him in Seattle for a short stay, before moving on to Minnesota to attend college. In 1959, Lee started to teach martial arts. He called what he taught Jun Fan Kung Fu, literally Bruce Lee's Kung Fu. It was his approach to Wing Chun. Lee taught friends he met in Seattle, starting with judo practitioner Jesse Glover, who continued to teach some of Lee's early techniques. Taki Kimura became Lee's first assistant instructor and continued to teach his art and philosophy after Lee's death. Lee opened his first martial arts school, named the Lee Jun Fan Kung Fu Institute in Seattle. Lee completed his high school education and received his diploma from Edison Technical School on Capitol Hill in Seattle. In March 1961, Lee enrolled at the University of Washington and studied dramatic arts, philosophy, psychology, and various other subjects. Despite what Lee himself and many others have stated, Lee's official major was drama rather than philosophy, according to a 1999 article in the university's alumni publication. Lee dropped out of university in early 1964 and moved to Oakland to live with James Wim Lee. James Lee was 20 years senior to Lee and a well-known Chinese martial artist in the area. Together, they founded the second Jun Fan Martial Arts Studio in Oakland. James Lee was responsible for introducing Lee to Ed Parker, an American martial artist. At the invitation of Parker, Lee appeared in the 1964 Long Beach International Karate Championships and performed repetitions of two-finger push-ups, using the thumb and the index finger of one hand, with feet at approximately shoulder-width apart. In the same Long Beach event, he also performed the 1-inch punch. Lee stood upright, his right foot forward with knees bent slightly, in front of a standing, stationary partner. Lee's right arm was partly extended, and his right fist was approximately 1 inch, 2.5 cm, away from the partner's chest. Without retracting his right arm, Lee then forcibly delivered the punch to volunteer Bob Baker, while largely maintaining his posture. This sent Baker backward and falling into a chair placed behind Baker to prevent injury, though Baker's momentum caused him fall to the floor. Baker recalled, "I told Bruce not to do this type of demonstration again. When he punched me that last time, I had to stay home from work because the pain in my chest was unbearable." It was at the 1964 championships that Lee first met Taekwondo master Jung-Gu Ri. The two developed a friendship or relationship from which they benefited as martial artists. He taught Lee the side kick in detail, and Lee taught Ri the non-telegraphic punch. In Oakland's Chinatown in 1964, Lee had a controversial private match with Wang Jackman, a direct student of Ma Qinfeng, known for his mastery of Xinji Quan, Northern Shaolin, and Tai Chi. According to Lee, the Chinese community issued an ultimatum to him to stop teaching non-Chinese people. When he refused to comply, he was challenged to a combat match with Wang. The arrangement was that if Lee lost, he would have to shut down his school, while if he won, he would be free to teach white people, or anyone else. Wang denied this, stating that he requested to fight Lee after Lee boasted during one of his demonstrations at a Chinatown theater that he could beat anyone in San Francisco, and that Wang himself did not discriminate against whites or other non-Chinese people. Lee commented, "That paper had all the names of the Sifu from Chinatown, but they don't scare me." Individuals known to have witnessed the match include Cadwell, James Lee, Bruce Lee's associate, no relation, and William Chen, a teacher of Tai Chi. Wang and William Chen stated that the fight lasted an unusually long 20 to 25 minutes. Wang claims that although he had originally expected a serious but polite bout, Lee aggressively attacked him with the intent to kill. When Wang presented the traditional handshake, Lee appeared to accept the greeting, but instead, Lee allegedly thrust his hand as a spear aimed at Wang's eyes. Forced to defend his life, Wang asserted that he refrained from striking Lee with killing force when the opportunity presented itself because it could have earned him a prison sentence, but used illegal cufflinks under his sleeves. According to Michael Dorgan's 1980 book Bruce Lee's Toughest Fight, the fight ended due to Lee's unusually winded condition, as opposed to a decisive blow by either fighter. However, according to Bruce Lee, Linda Lee Cadwell, and James Yim Lee, the fight lasted a mere 3 minutes with a decisive victory for Lee. In Cadwell's account, the fight ensued. It was a no-holds-barred fight. It took 3 minutes. Bruce got this guy down to the ground and said, "Do you give up?" And the man said he gave up. A couple of weeks after the bout, Lee gave an interview claiming that he had defeated an unnamed challenger, which Wong says was an obvious reference to him. In response, Wong published his account of the fight in the Pacific Weekly, a Chinese-language newspaper in San Francisco, with an invitation to a public rematch if Lee was not satisfied with the account. Lee did not respond to the invitation despite his reputation for violently responding to every provocation. There were no further public announcements by either, though Lee continued to teach white people. Lee had abandoned thoughts of a film career in favor of pursuing martial arts. However, a martial arts exhibition in Long Beach in 1964 eventually led to the invitation by television producer William Dozier for an audition for a role in the pilot for Number One Son, about Lee Chan, the son of Charlie Chan. The show never materialized, but Dozier saw potential in Lee. 1966 to 1970. American Roles and Creating Jeet Kune Do, from 1966 to 1967. Lee played the role of Kato alongside the title character, played by Van Williams in the TV series, produced and narrated by William Dozier, titled The Green Hornet, based on the radio show by the same name. The show ran for one season from September 1966 to March 1967. Lee and Williams also appeared as their characters in 3 crossover episodes of Batman, another William Dozier-produced television series. The Green Hornet introduced the adult Bruce Lee to an American audience and became the first popular American show presenting Asian-style martial arts. The show's director wanted Lee to fight in the typical American style using fists and punches. As a professional martial artist, Lee refused, insisting that he should fight in the style of his expertise. At first, Lee moved so fast that his movements could not be caught on film, so he had to slow them down. During the show's production, Lee became friends with Gene LaBelle, who worked as a stuntman in the show. The two trained together and exchanged martial arts knowledge from their respective specialties. After the show was cancelled in 1967, Lee wrote to Dozier thanking him for starting my career in show business. In 1967, Lee played a role in one episode of Ironside. The Jeet Kune Do emblem is a registered trademark held by the Bruce Lee estate. The Chinese characters around the Taijutsu symbol read, "Using no way as way and having no limitation as limitation." The arrows represent the endless interaction between yang and yin. Jeet Kune Do originated in 1967. After filming one season of The Green Hornet, Lee found himself out of work and opened the Jun Fen Kung Fu Institute. The controversial match with Wong Jackman influenced Lee's philosophy about martial arts. Lee concluded that the fight had lasted too long and that he had failed to live up to his potential using his Wing Chun techniques. He took the view that traditional martial arts techniques were too rigid and formalized to be practical in scenarios of chaotic street fighting. Lee decided to develop a system with an emphasis on practicality, flexibility, speed, and efficiency. He started to use different methods of training, such as weight training for strength, running for endurance, stretching for flexibility, and many others which he constantly adapted, including fencing and basic boxing techniques. Lee emphasized what he called the style of no style. This consisted of getting rid of the formalized approach which Lee claimed was indicative of traditional styles. Lee felt that even the system he now called Jun Fan Kung Fu was too restrictive, and it eventually evolved into a philosophy and martial art he would come to call Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist. It is a term he would later regret, because Jeet Kune Do implied specific parameters that styles connote, whereas the idea of his martial art was to exist outside of parameters and limitations. At the time, 2 of Lee's martial arts students were Hollywood script writer Sterling Siliphant and actor James Coburn. In 1969, the 3 worked on a script for a film titled The Silent Flute, and they went together on a location hunt to India. The project was not realized at the time, but the 1978 film Circle of Iron, starring David Carradine, was based on the same plot. In 2010, producer Paul Maslansky was reported to have planned and received funding for a film based on the original script for The Silent Flute. In 1969, Lee made a brief appearance in the Siliphant-penned film Marlowe, where he played a hoodlum hired to intimidate private detective Philip Marlowe, played by James Garner. who uses his martial arts abilities to commit acts of vandalization to intimidate Marlowe. The same year, he was credited as the Carrot Advisor in The Wrecking Crew, the fourth installment of the Matt Helm comedy spy-fi film starring Dean Martin. Also that year, Lee acted in one episode of Here Come the Brides and Blondie. In 1970, Lee was responsible for producing the fight choreography of A Walk in the Spring Rain, starring Ingrid Bergman and Anthony Quinn, again written by Silliphant. 1971 to 1973, Hong Kong films and Hollywood breakthrough. In 1971, Lee appeared in 4 episodes of the television series Longstreet, written by Silliphant. Lee played Lee Tiu-sung, the martial arts instructor of the title character Mike Longstreet, played by James Franciscus, and important aspects of his martial arts philosophy were written into the script. According to statements made by Lee, and also by Linda Lee Cadwell after Lee's death, Lee pitched a television series of his own in 1971, tentatively titled The Warrior, discussions of which were confirmed by Warner Bros. During a December 9, 1971, television interview on The Pierre Berton Show, Lee stated that both Paramount and Warner Bros. Wanted him to be in a modernized type of a thing, and that they think the Western idea is out, whereas I want to do the Western. According to Cadwell, Lee's concept was retooled and renamed Kung Fu, but Warner Bros. Gave Lee no credit. Warner Bros. States that they had for some time been developing an identical concept, created by 2 writers and producers, Ed Spielman and Howard Friedlander, in 169-85, as stated too by Lee's biographer Matthew Polly. According to these sources, the reason Lee was not cast was because he had a thick accent, but Fred Weintraub attributes that to his ethnicity. The role of the Shaolin monk in the Wild West was eventually awarded to then non-martial artist David Carradine. In an interview with the Pierre Berton Show, Lee stated he understood Warner Bros. Attitudes towards casting in the series. They think that business-wise it is a risk. I don't blame them. If the situation were reversed, and an American star were to come to Hong Kong, and I was the man with the money, I would have my own concerns as to whether the acceptance would be there. Producer Fred Weintraub had advised Lee to return to Hong Kong and make a feature film that he could showcase to executives in Hollywood. Not happy with his supporting roles in the US, Lee returned to Hong Kong. When aware that The Green Hornet had been played to success in Hong Kong and was unofficially referred to as the Kato Show, he was surprised to be recognized as the star of the show. After negotiating with both Shaw Brothers Studio and Golden Harvest, Lee signed a film contract to star in 2 films produced by Golden Harvest. Lee played his first leading role in The Big Boss, 1971, which proved to be an enormous box office success across Asia and catapulted him to stardom. He followed up with Fist of Fury, 1972, which broke the box office record set previously by The Big Boss. Having finished his initial 2-year contract, Lee negotiated a new deal with Golden Harvest. Lee later formed his own company, Concord Production Inc., with Chow. For his 3rd film, The Way of the Dragon, 1972, he was given complete control of the film's production as the writer, star, and choreographer of the fight scenes. In 1964, at a demonstration in Long Beach, California, Lee met karate champion Chuck Norris. In The Way of the Dragon, Lee introduced Norris to moviegoers as his opponent. Their showdown has been characterized as one of the best fight scenes in martial arts and film history. The role had originally been offered to American karate champion Joe Louis. Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon grossed an estimated US $100 million and US $130 million worldwide, respectively.